A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Hey guys, these are letters. That's what we'll be talking about today. Now, it's not only letters we'll be talking about, it's sort of the entire gamut of characters, and not just the gamut of characters, but sequences of characters. And since we start out with numbers, sort of letters is the best way to put this lesson title, but it's more than just letters. So first thing we want to start off with is the notion of a string. I'm going to go ahead and get the caps lock off. All right, so what is a string? Now you may have heard this term in the computing world, especially if you've done any sort of programming before. A string is simply what we refer to as a sequence of characters. So for example, a string could be like chicken. That would be, a string of 7 characters in the order CHICKEN. That would be a string. But a string could also be, any sequence of numbers and letters and symbols and, whatever else. So we want to talk about strings today. In the last lesson, we talked about numbers. So we did something like this, echo 5. So I'll go ahead and save this and get this started up here. So we go to letters, and that is our file. And there's the number 5. So this is what we did in the last episode. Now, you might think that this 5 is considered a string because, technically it's a sequence of one character. But the way PHP thinks about it is a number. And the reason that is because it's not surrounded in quotation marks. So I just surrounded this 5 in quotation marks. Now PHP is thinking about it as a string. It no longer thinks that 5 is a number. It thinks that 5 is just this character as part of a string. The string is just one character long, and that's the number 5. So if we save that and we print it out, we get no change because the representation for the number 5, that is the exact same thing as the representation for the string that just contains a 5. But the difference is that we can put some more interesting things in the strings. So here's chicken, and I'll go ahead and print that out, and we get chicken. Now, if we remove these quotes, PHP doesn't know what to do with this. It's not a number, so it can't think of it as a number. It's not surrounded by quotes, so it can't think of it as a string, so it really doesn't know what to do. It goes and looks for something called a constant, and we haven't talked about those yet. But right now there's no constant called chicken. So if we run this, what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, we don't know what this constant chicken is, and so we're just going to pretend like you forgot to wrap it in quotation marks. Now, the bad thing about this is we get this notice. It's a type of error that means that, things are still going fine, but, something may have happened that you weren't aware of. And so maybe we thought that chicken would be a constant, but it turned out to be a string. So we want to make sure that all the programs we write have no notices at all, because any sort of notice or warning is going to be something we want to avoid when writing our programs. But it did say, it assumed the string chicken, and after it did that, it just said, okay, well, the command was to echo chicken, and so that's what we're going to do. So let's put this back. And we can, of course, have a couple of echo statements. So I can echo chicken, egg. And now, just like with the number example, the same thing is going to happen. We get chicken, egg all in one line, no spaces. One thing we can do is we can just put that new line there. So this new line wraps around there, and we got our semicolon. So that'll put a new line in between. Now, of course, HTML, the way it sees a new line or any amount of white space, it just turns it into one space. So I need to go to the page source, and you'll see that there is actually a new line there. So going back, we've talked about almost as much as we can talk about for strings. One interesting thing to note is that they can be arbitrarily long. I mean, I can make this basically as long as I want, and things will just come out the way you expect it to. So let's go ahead and delete that. Now, one thing I'm going to do is let's go back to this string. It's the string that contains 5, and now I want to add a new string that contains another 5. Okay, so what is this going to do? Remember, if we said let's change this to regular ints first, so 5 plus 5. Now, of course, this is going to output 10, just like we showed in the last lesson. So let's change these to a string. And now what do you think is going to happen? So let's save that, and I'm going to refresh. It still says a 10. I got you. Don't tell me you didn't think there was going to be a 55 there, because I know you did. No, it's still 10, and there's a reason for that. That's because PHP has this thing called type coercion, and what it does is when it sees this plus, it knows that plus only works on 2 numbers, and so it'll try to turn that string into a number, and it'll try to turn that string into a number before it applies the operation. So the string 5 turned into a number 5, plus the string 5 turned into a number 5, and that's going to give us 10, which is of course what we got. Now, you might have been thinking it's going to make a 55, and in most programming languages, that's how that works. But the way we do that in PHP is not use a plus, we use a dot. Now, the dot is what we call the concatenation operator, and it expects, of course, 2 strings. So let's go ahead and save this. And of course, when we concatenate a 5 and a 5, we get 55. So you'll notice that I used single quotes here. That's very important because single quotes and double quotes do different things. Now, if I type in chicken here and I save it and I refresh, we'll get chicken. And it doesn't seem like anything was different there. But there's a couple of differences. One we're not going to get into in this lesson, and the other one we will. So let's change these back to double quotes. And I'm going to say chicken, and then I'm going to say echo \n, and then I'll say echo egg. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, don't worry about this \n just yet. I'm going to save that and go back here. And look, it's just what you thought, chicken, and then the \n, and then egg. Okay, nothing is strange about that. But now, let's change all of these single quotes to double quotes. Okay, that's not what I meant to do. Let's do that. All right, so the single quotes have now turned into double quotes. What happens now? And you'll see that I've got a new line character there. Now, this \n did not turn into a \n literally here. It turned into this new line character. When I say new line character, that just means the character, which the computer considers to be a character that takes you from the end of this line to the beginning of this line. So that's the difference here between the double quotes and the single quotes. The single quotes say everything that's inside these quotes, just output it absolutely verbatim, and there's only one exception to that. And the exception is when you want to type a, let's change these to single quotes here. Now, you might see a problem here. I want to type the word don't, which has an apostrophe in it, which is the same as a single quote. But now PHP is doing this. It says, okay, there's your string, and then there's some issue after it. PHP doesn't know what that means, and so it thinks we have another string started here, and it's all sorts of screwed up. So that one exception I was talking about is right here. If you want to type a single quote, you have to put a / before it. So now I've got DON, and then this / plus the apostrophe turns into just a single apostrophe, and then the T. So let's go ahead and save that and refresh, and I get the word don't. Now, I lied. There is one more exception to the rule, and that is when we have a double / like that, and that is to print out just a / character. And you can see that's what happened. Okay, so if I do the same thing for I can do the same thing for double quotes. I can say backslash double quote. I can say backslash backslash. And there's a few other special things you can do. But backslash in is going to be the one that I use a lot because, that gets us our new line. But there's backslash T for a tab character. And there's backslash R for a line feed. Like, different systems use different ways of denoting a new line. I usually just use a backslash in. And that takes care of that. Okay, so now we've talked about numbers and letters, which are actually strings. And in the next lesson, before we start talking about variables, I just want to mention about arrays. And then we'll be done with this second core lesson on variables and data types. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.